The neon lights of the San Diego nightclub flickered like restless fireflies, casting jagged shadows across the polished wooden floor. The bass thumped through the walls, vibrating Alina Cross's chest in rhythm with her heartbeat. She usually avoided places like this. Her life was one of strict schedules, encrypted communications, and endless meetings that decided the fate of thousands of sailors. But tonight, she craved something normal, something human. She moved through the crowd, her leather jacket tight across her shoulders, jeans hugging her legs in a way that suggested casual confidence. Her hair was pulled back into a practical ponytail, eyes shaded by aviator sunglasses that reflected the swirling lights of the club. No uniform, no insignia, no one should recognize her. Yet as she navigated between bodies pressed together on the dance floor, she felt the subtle awareness of being watched. Not unusual for someone like her, commanding the Pacific Fleet came with attention, but this felt different. Less formal, more primal. Then it happened. A heavy shoulder collided with hers, shoving her sideways. Alina stumbled slightly, catching herself on a nearby railing. The man, a towering, muscular figure with a jawline carved out of stone, didn't even flinch. His friend snickered. "Move," he barked, slurring the word. His breath carried the stench of whiskey. Alina's eyes flicked up to his face. Brown eyes, hardened, unyielding. His hair cut short, disciplined. A familiar air of danger clung to him like a second skin. "I think you should move," she said, calm but with a sharpness that cut through the thrum of music. His smirk widened, a dangerous glint lighting his gaze. "Lady, you don't tell Navy SEALs what to do." Alina didn't flinch. Her eyes narrowed. It was rare that someone in uniform or out of it didn't instinctively defer to her presence. She studied him, nodding his stance, the way his weight shifted as if ready for a fight. It reminded her of the countless times she had trained men far younger, stronger, and brash, yet none of them had the nerve or the arrogance to ignore her authority. "I suggest you apologize," she said again, her voice now carrying a weight that made even the loud music seem distant. The man laughed, a harsh bark that drew glances from nearby dancers. "Or what?" Alina's lips pressed into a thin line. She could have pushed him. She could have shouted, called in security. But she wanted to see just how far this fool would go. There was something intoxicating about the ignorance of danger, especially when it underestimated you. Suddenly, a shadow loomed near her shoulder, a club bouncer, broad and imposing. He leaned in, voice low. "Ma'am, your security detail is outside. They say it's urgent." Mason Hale's smirk faltered. He froze mid-step, confusion flickering in his eyes. Security detail. For her. He didn't even know she had clearance beyond what most SEALs ever encountered. And he certainly didn't know the uniform she usually wore, the one that commanded fleets, not clubs. Alina exhaled, serene but alert. "Tell them I'll be out in a moment." The bouncer hesitated. "Ma'am, they said it cannot wait, fleet level alert." Mason's jaw tightened, fleet level. He hadn't seen the world tilt like this before. The woman he had shoved, the woman he had assumed was just another civilian, suddenly seemed untouchable. Something inside him shifted, fear, yes, but also awe. Her phone buzzed violently, vibrating against the bar's surface. Multiple messages, all urgent, all the same line. "Admiral Code Sierra, urgent." Her eyes flickered with the faintest flash of steel. Mason could see it now, the calm, unshakable presence that radiated authority. He had brushed past her like she was inconsequential, but in reality, she commanded more than just respect. She commanded an entire ocean. He swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the folly of his arrogance. The club seemed to pause, if only for a heartbeat. The music still pulsed, the lights still danced, but the air was charged with something heavier, an invisible weight of impending reality. "Excuse me," Alina said softly, yet every syllable carried the force of a direct order. She turned, pulling Mason's gaze with hers. "I am Admiral Alina Cross. I command the United States Pacific Fleet." For a moment the world froze around him. His teammates glanced nervously, sensing the seismic shift in authority. Mason's lips parted, and all he could manage was a strained, "Admiral." Silence enveloped the nightclub like fog over the ocean. The patrons, oblivious moments ago, now felt the undercurrent of tension. Some whispered, some stared, uncertain whether to intervene or scatter. Alina's phone vibrated again, even more insistently. This time the messages included coordinates, satellite feeds, the unmistakable pulse of military alerts. Someone or something was moving, and it had drawn the attention of the Pacific Fleet. Mason's eyes darted between the screen and her, the realization dawning slowly but terrifyingly. She was no ordinary target. She was a force he would never dare underestimate. Her phone slipped back into her jacket pocket with practiced ease. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She simply turned to the bouncer and nodded. "I'll be out in 10 minutes. Then, with a glance that froze Mason in place, she added, almost as an afterthought, "You wanted to act like the strongest man in the room. Good. Let's see how strong you are when the world is watching." Mason exhaled, tension coiling in his chest like a spring about to snap. For the first time in his career, he realized that strength wasn't measured by muscle or bravado. It was measured by presence, by authority, by the quiet certainty that decisions, sometimes life and death ones, were in your hands. The club's bass thumped on, oblivious. The neon lights continued to flicker, reflecting off Alina's sunglasses as if mirroring a storm contained within her gaze. And then she moved. With a grace honed by decades of discipline, she navigated through the throng of dancers, her eyes never leaving Mason's. Every step was deliberate, every motion purposeful. It was a silent warning, a test, a lesson. Mason followed, unable to stop himself, drawn by a mix of duty, curiosity, and fear. This was no longer about a shove. This was about witnessing the command presence of a woman who could bend the Pacific itself with her orders. Outside, the night air hit like a shockwave, salty and sharp. The black SUVs and armed security personnel formed a line like a cordon of inevitability. Mason's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He knew, with a certainty that shook him, that he had stumbled into something far beyond his comprehension. Alina glanced back once, her eyes locking with Mason's. There was no malice, no humor, only the calm, unyielding authority of a person who had seen the edge of the world and stood firm. "Get in," she said. Mason hesitated. The weight of her command pressed on him like the hull of a submarine under deep water. He stepped forward, heart hammering. His arrogance had led him here, but it was her courage, her authority, that dictated what would happen next. As the SUVs pulled away, headlights slicing through the night like blades, Mason finally understood. He had brushed past a force of nature disguised as a civilian, and the ocean itself seemed to wait for her orders. Inside, her phone buzzed again. This time, the urgency was palpable. Unknown vessels breaching boundary. Immediate action required. Mason swallowed, voice tight. "Admiral, what now?" Alina's eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the ocean that lay before them like a living entity. Her lips curved, barely perceptibly. "Now," she said, voice low but firm, "we see what's moving." And in that instant, Mason realized. The night of a shove, of arrogance and bravado, had ended. The night of the ocean awakening had begun. The Pacific was calling, and they were about to answer. The black SUV cut through the humid San Diego night like a predator stalking unseen prey. Inside, the interior smelled of leather, faint coffee, and adrenaline. Mason Hale sat rigid, hands gripping the edge of his seat, eyes darting from the road ahead to the woman in front of him. He had trained for years with some of the most lethal teams in the world, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing had prepared him for her. Alina Cross sat silently, her fingers brushing lightly over the edge of her phone, reviewing incoming alerts with a calm precision that made Mason's jaw ache. She didn't speak to reassure herself or him. She didn't need to. Every movement she made radiated authority, a quiet storm that demanded attention. Admiral, Mason finally said, his voice low, almost reverent. I had no idea. I mean, I didn't recognize. She cut him off with a glance, sharp and unyielding. I command over 300,000 personnel across the Pacific. You don't recognize me because you don't pay attention. That's your first mistake. Mason swallowed. He had made dozens of tactical decisions in his career, some risking his life and the lives of others, but this, brushing off someone of this caliber, was a miscalculation that could have ended in disaster. His mind raced, replaying the shove, the smirk, the arrogance, the blink of underestimation that had cost him his composure. She didn't wait for him to recover. The SUV slowed as it approached a cordon of naval vehicles and armed personnel. Her security detail, always efficient, always intimidating, opened the path. Mason noted their disciplined movements, how each operative knew exactly what to do without a word. This was no ordinary night, and this was no ordinary civilian. Alina stepped out, her boots clicking against the asphalt with military precision, cutting through the chaos of clubgoers scattered near the curb. Mason followed, compelled by duty, curiosity, and a growing sense of awe. Admiral, one of her aides, whispered urgently. Satellite feed shows movements near the boundary, unknown vessels, high speed, unresponsive to hails. Alina's eyes narrowed. The glow from the streetlights reflected off her sunglasses, but Mason could see the focus beneath. Her mind was already calculating trajectories, analyzing speeds, assessing risks. She didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't falter. Mason found himself following her every motion, feeling the weight of his own arrogance pressing down on him. For the first time, he was not the alpha. He wasn't the predator. He was the student, the observer, caught in the presence of someone whose command presence could bend reality itself. Alina turned to him, voice calm but edged with authority. You wanted to act like the strongest man in the room. Let's see how strong you are when the world is watching. Mason's pulse spiked. He had faced firefights, ambushes, and the chaos of combat zones, but the tension in her tone carried the weight of authority, responsibility, and inevitability. It was a challenge, a warning, a test. Inside the command center, the hum of computers, satellite feeds, and frantic radio chatter created a symphony of controlled chaos. Analysts tapped furiously at keyboards, shouting updates over the din. Red alerts flashed across screens. Every screen, every feed, every data point converged into a single fact. Unknown vessels were breaching the U.S. Pacific boundary, and their movements were deliberate, coordinated, and faster than anything previously recorded. Alina didn't flinch. She moved between screens, her fingers tracing paths, marking coordinates, assessing speed, and calculating threat levels. Mason followed silently, absorbing the enormity of the situation. Chief Hale, she finally said, her eyes locking with his. I need your team ready for immediate deployment, full tactical assessment, prepare for possible engagement. Mason's training kicked in, adrenaline sharpening his senses. Understood, Admiral. But his mind was still spinning. This was no exercise. This was real. The unknown vessels could be foreign, experimental, or something else entirely. He had no idea what they were dealing with, and neither did anyone else. Analysts called out updates. Satellite confirms high-velocity surface contacts, unresponsive to standard communication, approaching from multiple vectors. Alina's voice was steady, calm. I want drone feeds active, sonar live, every platform deployed. I don't want surprises. A junior officer approached, holding a tablet. Ma'am, we're picking up low-frequency pulses, repeating patterns, not military code. Alina's brow furrowed. Could be environmental interference. No, ma'am, too structured, too deliberate. Her lips pressed into a line. Mapping, they're mapping us. Mason's stomach tightened. His mind raced through every possible scenario. foreign attack, experimental tech, unidentified craft. But nothing could prepare him for the silent, deliberate precision of something so unknown. Alina's phone vibrated again, showing new satellite overlays and heat signatures. "They're closer than predicted," she murmured. Her eyes, cold and calculating, scanned every data point. "Speed is too high for conventional vessels. They're skimming the waves, keeping minimal radar footprint." Mason's jaw tightened. "Impossible velocities, even experimental prototypes can't." "They can if someone doesn't want to be caught," Alina said. Her voice was calm but lethal, a quiet storm. She didn't flinch. Mason did. The room went silent for a moment. Every analyst, every officer, every SEAL in the room knew the gravity of what she just said. The unknown had entered their waters, and it wasn't leaving. Suddenly, another alert blared. "New contact approaching Pearl Harbor." Mason's eyes widened. "That's impossible." Alina didn't answer immediately. She studied the screen, calculating, weighing, preparing. Every movement deliberate, every decision monumental. "It's here," she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. "And it found us first." Her command staff moved with precision, scrambling destroyers, coordinating aircraft, transmitting orders with flawless execution. Mason watched, stunned. The woman he had shoved in a nightclub was now orchestrating a military ballet on a scale he had only read about in classified briefings. The unknown vessels were no longer just intruders. They were a challenge, a puzzle, a threat that required skill, precision, and courage. Mason's mind raced. She's not just commanding, she's calculating, she's anticipating. Alina's gaze met his, steady, unwavering. "Are you ready, Chief?" He nodded, words failing him. He was ready, but he knew, truly knew, that this was unlike anything he had faced before. The Pacific Fleet, under her command, was now in a race against an unknown force, moving faster than they could predict, faster than they could intercept. And in that instant, Mason Hale realized something he hadn't admitted to himself until now. He had underestimated her. He had shoved the wrong person. And now, the world might pay the price for his arrogance. The lights of the command center reflected off the polished consoles. The hum of satellites, the faint sonar pings, the distant roar of naval jets preparing for takeoff, it all combined into a tense, electric atmosphere. Mason felt it in his bones, the calm before the storm. Alina took a deep breath, eyes scanning the feeds, fingers flying over the touchscreen displays. Her mind moved faster than the signals on the screens, faster than the unknown vessels approaching Pearl Harbor. She was already 3 steps ahead. Mason, sitting behind her, clenched his fists. This wasn't just about a shove in a nightclub anymore. This was about survival, strategy, and the unknown force moving silently through the Pacific. And somewhere deep inside, he felt an unfamiliar emotion, respect. Not just for her, but for the sheer weight of responsibility she carried, and the terrifying knowledge that the fate of thousands rested in her hands. The room erupted in alarms again, red lights flashing as another alert pinged across every console. The unknown vessels had changed formation. They were no longer random. They were tactical, coordinated, intentional. Alina didn't flinch, her eyes locked on the display. "Prepare all units, every platform, nothing moves without my clearance." Mason exhaled, adrenaline and awe coursing through him. He had trained for combat in deserts, jungles, and mountains. He had faced ambushes, explosions, and hostile fire. But nothing had prepared him for this. A real-life test of skill, strategy, and nerve under a commander who could bend an entire fleet with her presence. The unknown vessels moved faster, closer, almost daring them to respond. Mason's stomach churned. He understood now, whatever they were dealing with, there would be no rehearsal, no second chances. And Alina, the woman he had shoved in a nightclub, was the only one standing between chaos and catastrophe. The alerts kept coming. The unknown force advanced. And Mason Hale realized that tonight, the shove in the club wasn't the dangerous act. Tonight, it was just the beginning. The command center was a cathedral of light and sound, the walls lined with screens showing satellite feeds, sonar pings, and live radar sweeps of the Pacific. Officers shouted updates, fingers danced across keyboards, and the hum of computers created a tense, constant drone. Yet amidst the chaos, all eyes kept returning to Admiral Elena Cross. She moved with a predator's grace, sharp, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. Every glance, every gesture communicated control, authority, and the kind of calm that made chaos itself pause. Mason Hale stayed close behind, a mixture of awe and disbelief constricting his chest. He had thought he understood command. He had thought he had seen skill, courage, and leadership in action, but nothing in his experience compared to the presence Elena exuded. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't gesture theatrically. She simply was, and the room bent to her will. "Admiral," an officer called, pointing to the main display. "The unknown vessels, they've shifted position. We're tracking multiple high-speed signatures moving in formation, directly toward Pearl Harbor." Mason's pulse spiked. Pearl Harbor, home base. He had been stationed there before, familiar with the layout, the defenses, the significance. He had fought in exercises designed to simulate this exact scenario, but those were drills. This was real, and it wasn't just an incursion, it was precise. Elena's eyes flicked to Mason. Analysis. He opened his mouth to speak, but she cut him off with a single glance. Mason swallowed. He knew that look. It meant speak only when spoken to, and prepare to act without hesitation. A tech officer, trembling slightly, pointed to a separate monitor. "Ma'am, we're picking up low-frequency pulses, repeating patterns. Not code, not communication from any known vessel or system. It's structured, deliberate, something scanning us." Elena leaned in, fingers tracing the coordinates. "They're mapping our coastline live. They're assessing every possible target, every weak point. This is reconnaissance." Mason's hands curled into fists. "Reconnaissance. They're moving faster than anything we know exists. There's no way." "There is a way," Elena interrupted, voice cold, calm, and final. "Someone designed it. Someone wants us to know they are here. Someone wants us to respond." The room grew silent for a heartbeat, the weight of her words pressing down like a physical force. Every officer, every SEAL, every analyst understood that they were no longer dealing with a minor threat. This was a precision strike, or a message, on an incomprehensible scale. Elena's phone vibrated again, displaying new overlays from satellites tracking the unknown vessels. The high-speed contacts had closed distance at an impossible rate. Heat signatures showed movement too precise, too controlled for conventional craft. They had the advantage, and the Pacific Fleet was already on alert. Mason leaned closer, his voice low. "They're faster than anything we have in our arsenal, if they make it to Pearl Harbor." "They won't," Elena said, almost to herself, but Mason caught the sharp edge. Her mind had already moved past fear, past speculation, into calculation. "We respond before they arrive. Every system, every platform, every asset at my disposal. No mistakes." A young analyst called out, "Admiral, there's a fourth signature larger than the others. It wasn't on any previous scans. It's massive." Mason's stomach clenched. "Massive." "Yes," she said, moving to the monitor. Her eyes narrowed as she studied the new contact. "It's not just a vessel, it's something different, something experimental. We've never tracked anything this size at this speed." The screens around them updated in real time, showing the movement of the unknown crafts as they sliced through the ocean like spectral predators. Their formation was deliberate, calculated, almost taunting. And then the fourth, larger vessel appeared on the feed, cutting through the waves in silence, dwarfing everything around it. Mason's hands tightened into fists at his sides. He had faced ambushes, firefights, and hostile fire. But this was beyond any threat he had ever imagined. The Pacific Fleet, powerful as it was, faced something entirely new, entirely unknown. Alina didn't hesitate. She issued orders with clarity and precision. Deploy all P-8 patrol aircraft. Position destroyers along the predicted trajectory. Activate satellite drones. No movement without my clearance. Do not engage without positive identification of threat patterns. Her voice carried across the room like a whip cracking in the air, and everyone moved instantly. Mason noted the efficiency, the training, the discipline, the sheer obedience. In moments, the room had transformed into a coordinated hive, each operator moving in sync with her commands. The unknown vessels moved again, closer to Pearl Harbor. Their paths were deliberate, converging toward a single point. Mason felt a chill in his chest. "Admiral, they're converging on the base," he said, voice tight. "They're testing us," Alina said softly, almost to herself. "They want to see our response. They want to know how we react under pressure." The fourth vessel, the massive one, shifted slightly, revealing a dark silhouette against the moonlit ocean. Its size was staggering, far beyond the dimensions of any known ship. Mason's breath caught. It didn't just dwarf destroyers, it dwarfed imagination itself. Alina turned to him, her face calm but her eyes sharp, calculating. "Chief Hale, you and your team will lead reconnaissance in real time. Drones, sonar, satellite feeds, every piece of intel you can gather. I want to know what we're dealing with before they reach the perimeter." "Yes, Admiral," Mason said, heart racing. He had faced impossible odds before, but never with the weight of the fleet and the unknown on his shoulders. A junior officer called out from the back. "Ma'am, thermal readings indicate active energy output, high levels, unidentifiable source. Could be weapons. Could be propulsion beyond our current capabilities." Alina's jaw tightened. "Then we assume the worst and prepare for engagement, full tactical readiness." Mason watched her move from station to station, issuing orders, analyzing data, and communicating with other assets. She was a living force of nature, unflinching, decisive, and precise. Every word, every glance, every decision radiated authority. He had underestimated her in a club. Now, staring at her in full command, he realized he had almost made the gravest mistake of his life. The unknown vessels continued their approach, silent but deliberate. The ocean itself seemed to hold its breath. And then, a new alert came in, satellite imagery showing one of the smaller vessels performing maneuvers that defied physics, almost as if it anticipated the fleet's movements before they happened. Mason's jaw dropped. "How?" "They are not human," Alina said quietly, eyes never leaving the screen. "Not in the conventional sense. Their movements are calculated with precision that exceeds any artificial intelligence we have in our systems. They are testing us, learning us, predicting us." Mason's mind raced. Every tactic he had trained for, every scenario he had rehearsed, every contingency plan, useless against something that didn't move like a human adversary. The fourth, massive vessel shifted again. Its shadow spread across the ocean, reflecting against the moonlight like a dark omen. Mason felt a shiver run down his spine. Alina didn't flinch. Her hands moved with decisive authority across the touchscreen, issuing orders, coordinating units, and preparing the fleet for the impossible. "Chief Hale," she said, voice cutting through the tense air, "prepare your team for immediate deployment. We need eyes on that fourth vessel now, and I want contingency plans ready in case it moves toward the base." Mason nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. The Pacific Fleet had never faced anything like this, and yet, under her command, they were poised to respond with precision, intelligence, and courage. He took a deep breath, his mind focused, adrenaline surging. This was no longer a shove in a nightclub. This was the start of a confrontation that would define the Pacific, the fleet, and perhaps even the world. The fourth vessel loomed on the screens, its intentions unknown. Its size, speed, and precision left no room for error. Mason Hale realized in a heartbeat that tonight, history would be written by those who could think, move, and command faster than the unknown force advancing upon them. And Admiral Elena Cross, she was already 3 moves ahead. The Pacific was holding its breath, and the world below had no idea what was coming. The night air was electric outside the command center, thick with tension, as jets roared into readiness on the distant runways of Pearl Harbor. Elena Cross moved through the room like a conductor orchestrating a symphony of chaos. Every officer, every SEAL, every analyst felt the pull of her authority, a gravity that forced them to focus, to anticipate, to act before they were told. Mason Hale followed closely, still digesting the fact that the woman he had shoved in a nightclub was now orchestrating the defense of an entire ocean. His team, normally the sharpest predators in the room, moved with a mixture of awe and apprehension. No one doubted her, yet the unknown vessels were unlike anything they had faced, faster, smarter, and more unpredictable than the fleet could possibly anticipate. Admiral, her XO Commander Lewis, shouted over the cacophony of alerts and voices. "We have unidentified surface contacts moving in formation. They're closing on Pearl Harbor. No response to hails." Elena's gaze sharpened, scanning the live feeds. Her fingers traced the paths of the vessels on the holographic map above the table. The unknown crafts moved like shadows on the water, perfectly synchronized, almost anticipating the fleet's defensive positions. "How many?" she demanded. 3 primary signatures plus 1 anomalous vessel, significantly larger than the others, Lewis replied, voice tense. "They're maintaining high speed and maneuvering beyond conventional physics." Mason's jaw tightened. "Impossible, they're too fast, too precise. We can't even track them effectively." Elena's lips pressed into a firm line. "Then we track them differently. Every drone in the Pacific, every sonar array, every satellite feed." She tapped a series of commands into the central console. "Deploy reconnaissance flights along predicted approach vectors. I want eyes on that 4th vessel immediately." A hush fell over the room as officers acknowledged her orders. Everyone knew the stakes. Every second counted. Pearl Harbor was no longer just a base. It was a potential battlefield, a target for a force that could decimate the fleet if underestimated. The first wave of P-8 patrol aircraft lifted off, engines screaming as they climbed into the night sky. Mason watched, heart pounding, as the drones and planes formed a web of surveillance over the Pacific. Every operator in the room was now a part of a coordinated ballet of technology and human expertise, but Mason could see the strain, the sheer impossibility of controlling the unknown. Then the monitors flickered. The thermal imagery revealed movement unlike anything the fleet had encountered. The 3 smaller vessels were skimming the waves at speeds beyond comprehension, leaving no wake, no disturbance in the water. And the 4th vessel loomed in the distance, a black silhouette against the moonlight, massive, almost otherworldly. "Elena, that thing," Mason's voice faltered. "It's enormous. How is it moving like that?" Her eyes never wavered from the screens. "It's not constrained by the physics we know, but physics only matters if we react predictably. We don't. We anticipate. We control what we can. We counter what we can't." Her words sent a chill through Mason. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't hesitating. She was calculating, analyzing, and preparing for the impossible. Suddenly, the communications officer shouted, "Ma'am, multiple contacts detected near the Hawaii coastline. Unknown propulsion, high-speed approach. Sensors picking up active energy outputs, unidentifiable, possibly weaponized." Mason's stomach knotted. This wasn't just a breach. This was a reconnaissance mission with teeth, a deliberate probe into America's heart. The unknown vessels weren't here to test. They were here to provoke, to measure, to intimidate. Elena tapped her headset. "Connect me to the fleet commanders. I want readiness protocols activated across all units. Engage every long-range radar, every sonar, every patrol vessel. Nothing moves without my clearance." Her calm authority rippled through the room. Mason realized that while the unknown vessels were testing the fleet, they weren't prepared for her. She had anticipated the incursion before it even began. Every move she made calculated, every command precise, and every response faster than the unknown adversary could expect. A junior officer called out, trembling, "Ma'am, we're detecting a pulse pattern from the fourth vessel. Low frequency, structured, deliberate, almost communicative." Alina's eyes narrowed. "It's mapping. They want to know our weaknesses, our positions, our reaction time. Every signature, every pattern is being recorded." She moved to the holographic display, marking coordinates and vectors. "We respond before they finish their assessment. They will not dictate the terms." Mason's mind raced. He had dealt with ambushes, unseen attackers, and impossible odds, but nothing prepared him for the reality of a massive unknown craft, probing defenses with a precision that seemed impossible. Then came another alert. A fourth anomalous heat signature had appeared, far larger, far more imposing than any known vessel. It moved slowly but deliberately, as if aware of every sensor, every surveillance drone, every patrol aircraft in the sky. "Admiral," Mason said, voice tight, "that fourth vessel, it's unlike anything we've ever encountered. It's massive, it's—" "Not invincible," Alina interrupted, her tone flat, precise. "It may be fast, it may be advanced, but it has weaknesses. It is a target, and we are prepared to engage if necessary." Mason swallowed, heart pounding. "Engage with what? Conventional weapons?" "Conventional is all we have," she said sharply. "Until we know more, we control what we can control. Readiness, reconnaissance, response. That's our power." The room erupted into motion. Reconnaissance flights repositioned. Sonar arrays swept the ocean. Satellites pinged, calculated trajectories, and updated maps in real time. The unknown vessels advanced, seemingly anticipating every move. Mason watched in awe as the fleet mobilized under her command, each decision precise, each response immediate, each movement calculated. And then came the first real alert from the P-8 overhead. "Ma'am, visual confirmation. 3 high-speed vessels closing in on coordinates near Pearl Harbor. The fourth, massive vessel, it's approaching at an unprecedented speed. It's rising." Mason's eyes widened. "Rising." Alina didn't flinch. She moved to the main console, marking the vessel's trajectory and issuing commands to deploy every available countermeasure. "They're testing our response," she said, voice low but deadly serious. "If we fail to anticipate, we lose the advantage." Mason's team prepared for deployment, adrenaline surging through their veins. They were seasoned, lethal operators, but this was unlike anything they had faced. Their adversary was intelligent, unpredictable, and utterly unknown. Alina issued another series of rapid commands, coordinating drone feeds, patrols, and destroyers. Her voice cut through the chaos with surgical precision. "Do not fire until I authorize. Every vessel, every aircraft, every system, ready for engagement. Eyes on the fourth vessel. And Chief Hale." Mason looked up, meeting her gaze. "Yes, Admiral." "You thought you could shove me aside tonight," she said, her voice calm but with a deadly edge. "You thought you could underestimate me. Consider this your real initiation." Mason's jaw tightened. His pulse raced, but he felt a surge of respect, admiration, and fear all at once. This was no longer a nightclub altercation. This was the battlefield of the Pacific, and she was leading the charge. Outside, the ocean reflected moonlight off its restless waves. The unknown vessels moved like phantoms, silent, precise, and deliberate. The fourth, massive vessel loomed closer to Pearl Harbor, casting a shadow over the fleet's readiness. Every operator, every SEAL, every pilot, and every analyst knew that the next moments could decide the fate of thousands. Alina's voice cut through the command center, clear and unwavering. "This is our moment. This is our response. eyes sharp, minds sharper. We are the Pacific Fleet. We act, we anticipate, and we control the unknown. Mason exhaled, tightening his gloves, readying his team. He had learned a hard lesson. Never underestimate anyone, especially a woman who commanded the Pacific Fleet. And as the fourth vessel continued its deliberate, impossible approach, the room held its collective breath. The night of a shove in a nightclub had transformed into a night where the Pacific itself might witness the impossible. The unknown vessels were closing in, and the countdown to confrontation had begun. The room was suffused with tension, an invisible weight pressing down on every officer, analyst, and operator in the command center. The hum of electronics, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards, and the occasional alert ping from satellites created a tense symphony, one that masked the silence of the Pacific outside. Mason Hale could almost feel the water itself holding its breath, as if the ocean knew that something extraordinary was moving through it. Alina Cross moved between stations with uncanny precision, her eyes scanning feeds, her fingers flying over touchscreens. Every movement was purposeful, every glance decisive. Nothing escaped her notice. She was no longer just commanding the fleet, she was orchestrating it, predicting, anticipating, responding to a threat that seemed almost supernatural in its speed and intelligence. "Ma'am," a young officer called out, voice trembling, "we're picking up structured sonar pulses, rhythmic, deliberate. They're scanning us, mapping our positions, but there's something else. It's like they're learning our patterns in real time." Alina's jaw tightened. Mapping, yes. Learning, yes. Predicting, perhaps. But we don't give them the advantage. Prepare countermeasures. Activate every sensor, every drone, every satellite relay. We identify first. We respond first. Mason watched, awestruck. He had faced ambushes, firefights, and high-stakes missions, but nothing prepared him for this. A massive, unknown fleet, moving with impossible precision, targeting Pearl Harbor and seemingly anticipating every tactical move. And yet, Alina moved as if the impossible were routine. "Admiral," the communications officer called, "the fourth vessel, it's making a move. Ascending slightly, almost as if preparing to breach the surface. Sensors indicate high energy output. This is massive, larger than any known craft." Mason felt his stomach tighten. "Admiral, that thing." "It's a challenge," Alina said calmly, her eyes never leaving the monitors. "And we respond. Eyes on it now. Deploy every available reconnaissance unit. I want a full readout before it reaches the perimeter." Outside, the first P-8 patrol aircraft rose into the night, engines screaming against the darkness. Mason and his team followed with drones, launching high above the waves, each device capturing real-time data that streamed directly into the command center. Every officer moved in tandem, creating a web of surveillance over the Pacific, attempting to anticipate the unknown vessel's next move. A sonar technician shouted, "Ma'am, multiple pulses detected. The vessels know the massive vessel is coordinating the others. It's controlling formation, velocity, and course in real time. It's calculating." Alina's lips pressed into a tight line. "Then we counter-calculate. Chief Hale, I want your team ready to respond to any sudden movement. We anticipate, then act." Mason's hands tightened around his tablet. He had been trained for high-stakes operations, but the scale of this event eclipsed anything he had ever experienced. This wasn't a mission. It was a test of human ingenuity against something seemingly beyond comprehension. The screens flickered. Heat signatures and sonar pings revealed a strange phenomenon. The three smaller vessels were skimming the waves with unimaginable speed, leaving minimal disturbance, minimal trace. But the fourth vessel remained immense, a dark silhouette rising and falling with the swell of the ocean. Its sheer size distorted the sensors, creating anomalies that technicians struggled to interpret. "Ma'am," one analyst called out, "we're receiving low-frequency pulses from the fourth vessel. Not coded language, not known signals, structured, deliberate, almost communicating." Alina leaned forward, studying the feed with an intensity that made Mason shiver. It's mapping us, learning us, testing our defenses. Every pattern, every movement is a data point. We must control the narrative. Her fingers moved with precision across the holographic map, issuing commands to redeploy reconnaissance drones, recalibrate sonar arrays, and coordinate patrols. Mason followed her every motion, absorbing the lesson she delivered silently. Authority wasn't about strength or weaponry. It was about control, anticipation, and unshakable calm. Then another alert hit the room. The fourth vessel shifted slightly, revealing a darker, denser silhouette, its shape unlike anything in the fleet's records. Mason's jaw tightened as he stared. The vessel was enormous, with a surface that reflected the moonlight like liquid metal, and its movement was deliberate, almost intelligent. "Alina, that thing, it's huge." Mason's voice faltered. "Not invincible," she interrupted, voice cutting through the tension. "We identify, we engage, we control what we can, focus on reconnaissance. Eyes sharp, minds sharper, we will not be caught off guard." Mason exhaled, feeling the weight of her authority. He realized that the shove in the nightclub had been a minor misjudgment, underestimating her in the field of combat, and now in the real theater of the Pacific, would have been catastrophic. "Ma'am," a junior officer called out, "additional unidentified readings near Hawaii. Low-frequency energy spikes. Could be weaponized, could be propulsion. Unknown capabilities." Alina's jaw set. "Then we assume the worst and act accordingly. Full tactical readiness. Nothing moves without clearance. Every operator, every aircraft, every ship, ready." The unknown vessels advanced, their approach precise, calculated, almost anticipatory. Mason's team prepared to deploy drones and reconnaissance units to intercept the vessels' paths. Every operator moved as if under Alina's singular command, their training amplified by her presence. Then came the first real sighting from a drone feed, a sweeping infrared image showing the three smaller vessels cutting across the Pacific like living shadows, while the massive fourth vessel rose slowly, dark and foreboding against the moonlit waves. Its sheer size was staggering, dwarfing destroyers and patrol ships. Mason's breath caught. "Admiral, it's rising higher, too high for conventional sensors." Alina didn't flinch, her gaze remained fixed on the feed. "We control the response. We do not react blindly. Eyes on it, assess, record, analyze, anticipate, respond." She turned to Mason. "Chief Hale, you and your team deploy immediately. Reconnaissance, close-range assessment. I want eyes on that fourth vessel, and I want contingency plans ready for every possible maneuver." Mason nodded, adrenaline surging. This was no longer a training exercise or a simulated attack. The unknown vessels were real, intelligent, and now very close to Pearl Harbor. The first of Mason's drones rose from the launch bay, followed by the rest of the team. Engines screamed as the craft sped toward the unknown, capturing live data, thermal readings, and sonar imaging. Mason could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down. One mistake, one miscalculation, the consequences would be catastrophic. Meanwhile, the fourth vessel's silhouette grew sharper on the monitors. Its movements were deliberate, intelligent, and entirely unreadable. It was as if it anticipated every response the fleet made before any action could be executed. Alina's fingers moved faster, issuing commands, reallocating units, and recalculating trajectories. She was a storm of calculated precision, and everyone in the room felt the pull of her authority, following her lead with unquestioning obedience. "Chief Hale," she said, voice cutting through the tension, "tonight you learn a hard lesson. Authority isn't brute force. It's anticipation. It's control. It's seeing the battlefield before it exists and preparing to respond before the enemy acts." Mason swallowed, understanding fully. The woman he had shoved in a nightclub was now orchestrating the defense of the Pacific Fleet. Her presence, her command, her clarity, it was unmatched. Outside, the Pacific remained deceptively calm, but the fleet knew better. The unknown vessels were moving, calculating, and closing in. Every operator, every aircraft, every ship, every sonar technician was aware of the stakes. And Alina, she was ready. The unknown vessels advanced silently, deliberately. The fourth vessel, massive and foreboding, rose higher against the horizon. Mason's pulse raced. He had faced impossible odds before. But this was beyond anything he had trained for. The room fell silent as the feed updated, showing the fourth vessel fully above the waterline, casting a shadow that dwarfed destroyers. Mason felt a shiver run through him. Alina didn't flinch. She moved with precision, issuing commands, preparing her fleet, and orchestrating a response that was as lethal as it was calculated. The Pacific had turned silent, and the world below had no idea what was coming. The night over the Pacific was unnaturally quiet, as if the ocean itself was holding its breath. Outside Pearl Harbor, waves lapped at the hulls of destroyers and frigates, but even the sea seemed aware that something unprecedented was approaching. Mason Hale and his team were already airborne in reconnaissance drones, the hum of their engines cutting through the tense darkness as they followed the unknown vessels with a mix of awe and apprehension. Inside the command center, the atmosphere was electric. Every screen flickered with live feeds, thermal imaging, sonar overlays, and satellite tracking. The unknown vessels moved with precision, as if reading the fleet's every thought. Yet in the midst of chaos, Admiral Alina Cross remained an immovable center of calm. She surveyed the data with a steady gaze, issuing orders with a speed and clarity that left everyone in the room simultaneously reassured and terrified. "Ma'am," a sonar technician called, voice tense, "the three smaller vessels are approaching the outer perimeter. Estimated time to intercept, 5 minutes. The fourth vessel is closing in at an unusual trajectory. It's avoiding detection patterns, manipulating its own thermal footprint." Alina's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we adapt, we adjust our coverage, deploy drones in predictive arcs, not linear paths, anticipate its moves, eyes on it, all feeds consolidated." Mason, flying a drone over the waters, could see the three smaller vessels slicing across the ocean like deadly shadows. Their movements were fast, controlled, almost intelligent. They didn't just move, they calculated, evading waves and currents in ways that defied conventional physics. And then there was the fourth vessel. Rising out of the darkness, it was massive, dwarfing everything around it. Its surface shimmered with an unidentifiable metallic sheen, reflecting moonlight like liquid glass. "Admiral," Mason said over comms, voice tight with a mix of fear and awe, "the fourth vessel, it's enormous. I've never seen anything like it." She didn't flinch. "We will," eyes sharp, data collected, contingencies ready. "You are not here to marvel, you are here to anticipate and respond." The command center was silent for a heartbeat. Every operator understood the gravity. Pearl Harbor itself could become a battlefield in minutes, and the unknown vessel's movements were deliberate, targeted, and terrifyingly precise. Suddenly, the first drone detected something impossible. One of the smaller vessels had paused mid-ocean, then accelerated at a speed that seemed to tear through the waves. It sliced past patrol ships, leaving only faint ripples in its wake. Mason's fingers flew over the controls, adjusting course, tracking its trajectory, and sending live data back to the command center. "Admiral," he said, voice tense, "these vessels, they're not just fast, they're calculating, evading our sensors before we even detect them." Alina's eyes narrowed. "They are probing us, testing, measuring response times. Every movement is data, but we will not allow them to gain the advantage. Adjust flight paths, deploy counter-drones in intercept arcs. Do not engage unless I give clearance." Then the unthinkable happened. The fourth vessel, the massive one, moved with sudden intent. Its silhouette emerged fully above the waterline, reflecting moonlight across the surface like a dark colossus. Mason could feel the tension in the air, a physical pressure pressing against his chest. "Admiral, it's rising above the waves. Full view. Estimated displacement, well beyond anything in naval records." Alina didn't flinch. "Eyes on it, record every detail. No panic. Prepare contingency plans for engagement if necessary. Anticipate its trajectory. Calculate distance, speed, vectors. Every unit ready." The drone feeds captured an unprecedented view. The fourth vessel's surface seemed almost alive, moving with subtle undulations, reflecting light in strange patterns. Its presence was more than physical. It carried a sense of inevitability, a silent dominance over the ocean itself. Mason's mind raced. It's like it knows we're watching, like it's anticipating our every move. "Then we move differently," Alina said, her voice calm but deadly serious. "Predict its predictions, counter before it acts, control the narrative, eyes sharp, mind sharper. This is not an attack yet, it is reconnaissance. We respond intelligently, not impulsively." The smaller vessels began weaving around the fleet, darting in patterns that seemed to test defenses, sensors, and tactical readiness. One of them accelerated sharply, almost as if taunting Mason's drones, testing their limits. His hands tightened around the controls, sweat slicking his palms. "Alina," Mason said, voice taut, they're probing, testing the fleet's reaction. They know our tactics. They're adjusting in real time." She didn't even glance at him. "Then we must adapt in real time, deploy every countermeasure. Drones, sonar, patrol units, satellites. Observe, anticipate, and control. Every move they make is information. We will not be caught unprepared." Outside, the night sky filled with the lights of reconnaissance drones as they moved to intercept the vessels, unpredictable paths. Mason guided his unit with surgical precision, each drone a lifeline of information streaming directly to the command center. The fourth vessel shifted again, and for the first time emitted a pulse that resonated through the ocean, detectable even by the most sensitive sonar arrays. It wasn't an attack yet, but it was deliberate, a warning, a signal, a challenge. "Alina, that pulse fits," Mason began. "Recorded," she interrupted sharply. "Analyzed, anticipated. Continue tracking, every movement is data. Do not engage unless instructed. Focus. Eyes on the target. Do not react emotionally, react strategically." Mason realized something chilling. This was not just a reconnaissance mission for the unknown vessels. It was a test. They were measuring the fleet's reaction, learning from it, probing for weaknesses. And under Alina's command, the fleet was countering that analysis, staying one step ahead. "Admiral," Lewis said from across the room, "the fourth vessel is maneuvering around our outer perimeter. It's intelligent. It's predicting our deployment of drones and patrols." Alina's jaw tightened. "Then we predict its prediction, adjust countermeasures, redeploy units in arcs, not lines, anticipate its moves before it executes them. Every vessel, every drone, every sensor, ready for immediate response." Mason's hands shook slightly, a mix of fear and exhilaration. The woman he had underestimated in a nightclub was orchestrating a real-time dance of strategy and precision against a force unlike anything he had ever encountered. Every decision, every command, every calculation could mean life or death for the fleet, for Pearl Harbor, and for thousands of lives depending on them. And then a new alert flashed. The massive fourth vessel was accelerating, slicing through the water at a speed that made Mason's heart race. It was moving closer to the fleet, closer to Pearl Harbor itself. "Alina," Mason's voice was barely audible. She didn't flinch. Her eyes locked on the monitors, calculating, anticipating, commanding. "Prepare for engagement, eyes sharp. Contingencies ready. This is not a drill. Control the battle space. Respond intelligently. We will not be surprised." The Pacific was holding its breath. The first contact was about to occur. And for Mason Hale, The shove in a nightclub seemed a distant memory compared to the force of nature that stood at the helm of the Pacific Fleet, Admiral Elena Cross. The night had turned from reconnaissance into a prelude to confrontation. And the unknown vessels were watching, calculating, and advancing. The first hints of dawn barely touched the horizon when the tension in the Pacific reached its breaking point. The command center was a storm of screens, voices, and alerts, each flashing red with urgent warnings. Mason Hale could feel the adrenaline in his veins, a tension coiling like a spring as he monitored drone feeds, satellite data, and sonar outputs. Every second mattered. Every decision could tip the balance between survival and catastrophe. Admiral Elena Cross stood at the center of it all, unshakable, commanding, and almost impossibly calm. Her eyes scanned every feed, calculated every movement, and anticipated every reaction. To her, the unknown vessels weren't just anomalies, they were variables in a complex equation, and she had every intention of controlling the outcome. "Chief Hale," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like steel, "the vessels are moving into attack vectors. This is it. Eyes on every unit. Reconnaissance continues, but prepare for immediate counter-engagement if necessary." Mason's heart pounded. He had flown through firefights, ambushes, and hostile territory, but nothing prepared him for the enormity of this moment. The Pacific Fleet, poised against an unknown adversary, depended on every move he made, every drone he piloted, and every observation he transmitted. The three smaller vessels darted like shadows across the water, evading the fleet's patrols and drones with precise, intelligent movements. The fourth vessel loomed in the distance, a massive, dark silhouette that radiated quiet menace. Its surface shimmered with metallic fluidity, reflecting the pale light of dawn. Mason's eyes were fixed on it, aware that one misstep could trigger a disaster beyond comprehension. "Admiral," a young officer called out, voice trembling, "the fourth vessel is emitting high-energy pulses, weaponized or propulsion, unknown capabilities. It's responding to our drone deployments in real time." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we respond faster, eyes on its trajectory, adjust countermeasures, predict its predictions. Do not act blindly." Mason guided his drones closer, capturing detailed imaging of the vessel. Every shift, every pulse, every subtle movement was transmitted back to the command center in real time. The massive vessel seemed to anticipate each move, its sensors, or whatever guided it, tracking, analyzing, and adapting. "Chief Hale," Elena said, her eyes locked on the monitors, "prepare a secondary drone wave. Focus on lateral approach patterns. If it anticipates frontal maneuvers, we shift laterally. Every angle must be covered. Predict, then act." Mason's fingers flew over the controls. The drones ascended and split into precision arcs, moving in unison like an extension of the fleet itself. The three smaller vessels reacted instantly, adjusting their courses, but Mason could see that even their intelligence had limits. Every maneuver they executed was recorded, analyzed, and anticipated by Elena's command. Suddenly, the fourth vessel unleashed a pulse that rippled through the water. Mason could feel it through the feed, a shockwave of energy, subtle but undeniable. One of the drones wavered, sensors flickering. "Evasive maneuvers," Mason shouted into his headset, fingers flying across the control panel. "They've detected our drones." Elena's voice rang out, calm but sharp. "Good, that's what we want. Record every response. Analyze energy output. They're revealing their capabilities. Do not panic. Control the battle space." The first strike came moments later. The three smaller vessels fired bursts of energy into the water, arcs of light skimming across the surface. Patrol ships executed evasive maneuvers, artillery tracking the pulses but holding fire until Elena gave the command. Mason's drones captured the volleys, sending data back to the command center for rapid analysis. "They're probing defenses," Elena said, eyes fixed on the screen. "This is not a full attack yet. It's testing, measuring, seeking weaknesses. We respond with precision, not reaction. Mason's pulse spiked. He guided drones closer, capturing thermal and sonar imaging of the smaller vessels as they maneuvered around the fleet. Their speed and intelligence were staggering, but even they had limitations. With Alina orchestrating countermeasures, the fleet remained a step ahead. "Admiral," Lewis called, voice urgent, "the fourth vessel is descending toward the fleet's perimeter. It's massive. Its energy output is increasing. We may be facing an engagement any second." Alina's lips pressed into a firm line. "Then we engage intelligently. No rash action. Countermeasures ready. Drones in intercept arcs. Recon units prepared for rapid response. Every system active." Mason guided his drone squadron, watching as one of the smaller vessels approached a destroyer. The vessel paused, hovering like a predator, then accelerated with impossible speed, skimming the waves in a perfect arc. Mason's drone nearly lost signal as it tracked the maneuver, but he held it steady. "Eyes on it," Alina shouted. "Record, anticipate, counter. This is not chaos, it is controlled engagement." The first collision of tactics occurred. A drone swooped close to one of the smaller vessels, sending pulses of electromagnetic feedback. The vessel reacted instantly, shifting direction mid-movement, skimming the water with impossible agility. Mason's hands flew over the controls, maintaining focus as data streamed back into the command center. "Excellent," Alina said, her voice low but commanding. "They reveal their limits, record every movement, analyze every pulse. We learn, we adapt, we control." Suddenly, the fourth vessel moved with unprecedented speed. It sliced through the water, cutting between two destroyers, its size dwarfing everything around it. Energy pulses emanated from its hull, forcing ships into evasive maneuvers. Mason's chest tightened. One wrong move could trigger catastrophe. "Alina, it's coming in fast, too fast," Mason shouted. "Then we adapt faster," she replied, calm and precise. "Deploy lateral intercept drones. Focus on data collection, not destruction. Every maneuver is intelligence. Do not react emotionally, act strategically." The first contact intensified. The smaller vessels darted around patrol ships, probing, testing, and retreating in complex patterns. The fourth vessel loomed above the fleet, radiating menace and power. Mason guided drones close enough to capture high-resolution imaging, while Alina coordinated the fleet's movements with surgical precision. Then an unthinkable moment. One of the smaller vessels emitted a high-frequency pulse, disrupting electronic systems on a nearby frigate. Lights flickered. Radar temporarily failed. Mason's heart raced. "Admiral," he shouted. "Countermeasures activated," Alina replied. "Redirect power. Stabilize systems. Focus on tracking the fourth vessel. Do not engage until fully analyzed. Every response is data. We control the battlefield." Mason watched as the fleet executed evasive maneuvers under her command, every action calculated, every movement precise. Despite the overwhelming power of the unknown vessels, the Pacific Fleet remained coordinated, disciplined, and one step ahead. "Chief Hale," Alina said, eyes locked on him for the first time, "tonight you learn a lesson. Brute force alone does not win battles. Control, anticipation, and precision do. Every system, every operator, every drone, we act as one unit. That is how we survive the impossible." The fourth vessel loomed closer, its massive form reflecting the dawn's first light. Mason's pulse raced. Every operator, every drone, every ship depended on the fleet's coordination and Alina's leadership. The first engagement had begun. The battle space was alive with energy pulses, evasive maneuvers, and high-stakes precision. And Mason understood the truth. Underestimating her had been the last mistake he would ever make. The Pacific held its breath, and the unknown vessels were watching, calculating, and preparing for the next strike. The first light of dawn broke over Pearl Harbor, streaking the horizon with molten gold that reflected on the restless waters below. The Pacific, vast and seemingly infinite, now felt impossibly small. The unknown vessels, enigmatic and formidable, had pushed the fleet to its limits. The massive fourth vessel loomed closer, a shadow stretching across the waves, its metallic surface shimmering like a predator ready to strike. Inside the command center, Admiral Elena Cross was the calm in the storm, a singular presence orchestrating every countermeasure, every drone, every patrol, and every decision with surgical precision. Her eyes scanned the feeds, assimilating data faster than any human should be able to, issuing orders that rippled through the fleet like a tide of unyielding authority. Mason Hale and his drone squadron hovered at the edge of the unknown vessel's approach. His hands moved with a mixture of fear, adrenaline, and awe, piloting reconnaissance units that streamed every detail back to the command center. The smaller vessels darted across the water with lethal intelligence, while the fourth, massive vessel advanced with a terrifying inevitability. "Elena," Mason said into the headset, voice tense, "they're coordinating. All four vessels, they're acting as one unit. And the fourth, it's preparing to breach our defensive perimeter." She didn't flinch. "Then we prepare, every unit active, every countermeasure deployed. We anticipate its trajectory and control its options. This is not chaos, it is calculated confrontation." The room was tense. Every operator understood the stakes. One wrong move could result in catastrophic loss, not just of ships but of lives. The drones streamed back thermal imaging, sonar overlays, and electromagnetic readings, revealing patterns, vulnerabilities, and energy emissions from the unknown vessels. "Chief Hale," Elena continued, eyes locked on the massive fourth vessel, "we engage strategically, not recklessly, predict their patterns, force them to react to us, not the other way around. Every pulse they emit, every movement they make is data. We exploit it." Mason nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down. The Pacific Fleet depended on precision, coordination, and the unparalleled leadership of the woman who had once been shoved in a nightclub, a memory that now felt almost trivial compared to the enormity of the moment. Outside, the first wave of drones executed complex arcs around the unknown vessels, drawing their attention and probing for weaknesses. The smaller vessels reacted immediately, evading and accelerating with preternatural speed. The fourth vessel shifted, its massive silhouette moving in tandem with the others, radiating an energy that disrupted sensors and challenged the fleet's understanding of physics itself. "Elena, it's anticipating our move," Mason shouted, tension in every word. "Then we move differently," she replied, her voice calm but resolute. "Force it to anticipate our anticipation, predict the unpredictable, eyes sharp, minds sharper." A high-frequency pulse rippled through the water. One of Mason's drones wavered, almost losing signal. Nearby patrol ships reported electronic interference, systems flickering under the unknown energy. "Countermeasures online," Elena said. "Redirect power, stabilize systems, do not panic. Observe, analyze, respond." The first engagement had escalated into a full-scale confrontation. The three smaller vessels darted aggressively, attempting to test the fleet's perimeter defenses, while the fourth vessel hovered above the surface, calculating every move. Mason guided drones closer, capturing high-resolution imagery of their movements. Every detail, every pulse, every shift in trajectory was recorded, analyzed, and relayed to the command center in real time. "Admiral," Lewis said, voice tense, "the fourth vessel is descending rapidly. Its energy output is escalating, engagement imminent." Elena's jaw tightened. "Then we control it. Lateral intercept drones deployed, recon units in full readiness, every ship prepared, engagement measured, not impulsive, control the battlefield, every move precise." Mason's chest tightened. The massive vessel cut through the waves, moving faster than anticipated. The three smaller vessels coordinated with it, probing the fleet with astonishing intelligence. One of the destroyers was forced into evasive action, narrowly avoiding energy pulses that skimmed the surface like liquid lightning. "Prepare for engagement," Alina commanded. "This is the test. This is the moment. Every operator, every system, every unit execute with precision. We control the Pacific, or we adapt until we do." Mason guided his drones into intercept patterns. The smaller vessels reacted instantly, attempting to evade the arcs, but the data they revealed was invaluable. Each maneuver, each acceleration, each evasive action was recorded and fed to the command center. Alina's eyes moved rapidly, processing the streams of information, calculating probabilities, and adjusting the fleet's response in real time. Then came the climactic movement. The fourth vessel descended rapidly, massive waves radiating outward. Mason's drone feeds captured the shadow as it passed over the fleet, a colossus of unknown design, powerful, intelligent, and impossibly fast. "Alina, it's," Mason began. "Observed," she interrupted sharply. "Analyzed, contingencies ready. We respond strategically, not with panic. Focus, Chief Hale, every maneuver counts." The fleet executed a synchronized counter-response. Drones deployed electromagnetic pulses, sonar disruptions, and simulated decoy patterns. Destroyers adjusted positioning, patrol units moved into predictive arcs, and reconnaissance drones streamed high-resolution imaging into the command center. The smaller vessels darted, accelerated, and reacted, but each movement revealed more about their limitations. Mason's pulse raced. He could feel the weight of every life aboard the fleet, every decision and every second pressing down like gravity. But Alina's calm authority was a tether, a steadying force that cut through the chaos. "Now," she said, voice precise and commanding, "deploy the countermeasure sequence. Focused energy pulses along predicted trajectory of the fourth vessel. Anticipate reaction. Adjust in real time." The fleet moved as one. Energy arcs struck the surface of the fourth vessel, while drones circled to assess response. The massive ship shifted, reacting but not with impunity. Its movements revealed structural vulnerabilities, propulsion limitations, and energy patterns. Mason's breath caught as the first evidence of success appeared. The vessel, for all its apparent perfection, reacted with a fraction of hesitation. It adjusted, recalculated, but the fleet had forced it to reveal itself. "Alina, it's showing weakness," Mason said, disbelief in his voice. "Observation confirmed," she replied calmly. "We adapt, we exploit, controlled engagement, every move calculated. No heroics, no recklessness. This is strategy, not instinct." The unknown vessels retreated slightly, reassessing, while the fleet maintained tight coordination. The first true engagement had concluded, not in total destruction, but in a critical demonstration of control. The Pacific Fleet had faced the impossible and forced the unknown adversary to react. Mason lowered his drone controls slightly, exhaling. We did it. We held our ground." Alina's eyes never left the monitors. "We survived the first strike. We learned from it. The battle may continue, but control is ours. Never forget this lesson. Authority, preparation, anticipation. These win battles, not brute force." The crew in the command center exchanged glances, a mixture of relief and awe. They had witnessed the impossible, a fleet facing unknown, technologically superior vessels, and not just surviving but controlling the engagement. Mason finally looked at her. The woman he had underestimated in a nightclub, the one he had shoved without a thought, was not just a leader. She was a force of nature, unshakable, brilliant, and commanding beyond comprehension. The unknown vessels receded into the horizon, leaving the Pacific eerily calm. The first strike had ended, but the implications were clear. The fleet had faced an enemy beyond imagination and had held. "Alina," Mason said, voice quiet, almost reverent, "I underestimated you. I didn't even know what I was dealing with." She turned to him, her eyes calm but fierce, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "Now you know, and now you never underestimate anyone again." Outside, the Pacific reflected the rising sun, golden and vast. But beneath the surface and beyond the horizon, the unknown vessels remained, a reminder that the battle for dominance, for survival, was never truly over. Yet one thing was certain. Under the command of Admiral Elena Cross, the Pacific Fleet was a force that even the impossible could not ignore. And Mason Hale, along with the rest of the fleet, had learned a lesson they would never forget. The night had tested them, the dawn had proven their resilience, and the Pacific, for now, remained theirs.